Thank you for coming today to listen to another speech. I really appreciate it. I'm going to throw some names of some successful professional individuals, and I want to see if you can think of what they have in common. John Lennon, Muhammad Ali, Steven Spielberg, Jim Carrey, Richard Branson, and Pablo Picasso. Does anyone know? Go ahead, Ms. Audrey.
They're all dyslexic?
Yeah, they are. They're all dyslexic. Is that surprising to anybody when you hear that list? I know that it was for me when I started researching, but upon researching, I found that it is way more common than I thought. Roughly 1 in 5 individuals are dyslexic. And according to the Austin Learning Center, that's roughly 15% of the population, which is huge for one learning disability. So you may ask, that's great, but why is that real important? Well, as educators and parents of younger kids, it's important that we're exposed and have a basic understanding of dyslexia. That way we can give appropriate accommodations and early intervention. Early intervention is the key. That way they can be successful at both school and in their home life. So you might ask, what is dyslexia? It is a learning disability in reading. It is also a neurological disorder, which means dyslexics process information on the right-hand side of their brain versus the left-hand hemisphere. So it comes in on the right, goes through their frontal lobe, and then goes to the left, which just takes more time. It's also genetic, which means it runs in families. So if you have an adult who has it or a parent, there's a likelihood that their children are going to have it as well. It runs on a continuum, can be mild, can be severe, every case is unique. So what does it mean to be dyslexic? It means that you have a language-based processing disorder in writing, reading, and spelling, sometimes even spoken vocabulary. You have a weak phonemic awareness, meaning they do not understand the role between letters and the sounds, like A is ah and B is ba. They also have difficulties with decoding and spelling. They can have a hard time with reading comprehension. They're working so hard to decode those words that they can't pay attention to what they're reading. Also, they may not want to read aloud. It's very difficult for them to read aloud. Okay, so we've talked about what dyslexia is. Now let's talk about what it's not. There's some myths out there that I'd like to talk about. So it is not a sign of poor intelligence. It is not a sign of laziness. It is not a sign of impaired hearing or visual. They do not see words backwards. It is not a result of poor instruction at school. It is not a disability that will go away, and it's not a medical problem. Upon research, I found some common strengths that dyslexics have. They are outside of the box thinkers. They're very strategic in their thinking. They're very creative. They're intuitive. They have great people skills, and they have good spatial skills. What I found was really interesting was 35% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic, according to the Austin Learning Solutions, and also 50% of NASA employees are dyslexic. I read an article in New York Times that said 40% of millionaires that they had talked to were dyslexic. I thought that was really impressive. So possible signs that your child or student in your school is dyslexic. You have a student that's very bright, articulate, and intelligent, but they are reading, writing, and spelling below grade level. They have difficulty matching the sounds to the letters. They have difficulty with rhyming words, difficulty reading out loud with their fluency in reading. They have trouble with word problems like in math. They have a hard time keeping time, and organizational skills are poor. They have a hard time with left and right. Some of them have a hard time with tying their shoes. That's an early indication. A lot of them have problems with recalling days of the week and months of the year. That's more on the severe. I have a brother who has dyslexia, and he has a really hard time with that. Some of them have real low self-esteem. They can have performance anxiety. For little kids, they may have a really awkward, tight grip on their pencil, and their handwriting might suffer because of that. So if you have a child who's dyslexic, or you think someone might be dyslexic in your household, what do you do? So you can contact the reading specialist at your school. You can contact special education. You can go to internet for help. different blogs, websites. Always be careful, obviously, where you get your information. Principals are also a really great source. How can we support our students who are dyslexic? You can give them emotional support, unconditional. Avoid humiliation. Don't have them read out loud or write on the board in front of other kids if they're not comfortable in doing so. Allow for extra time on tests, assignments, homework. This is going to take them a little bit longer. Writing instructions is key. Repeat, write on the board, even for parents. Somehow you can have a whiteboard, write down your instructions or something that you want them to do in sequential order. We can provide books on tape, text on tape, something where they can read and listen to it at the same time. Oral testing at school can be huge. Let them utilize their creativity. We can have them draw a picture before they write about a picture so they can visually see it before they write. Let them use some creative skills. There's a couple teaching strategies that I want to talk about that can be helpful if you have either a dyslexic student or a dyslexic child at home. The first one is a multisensory approach, which is the first sheet there that I gave you. This is where you use 2 or more senses in learning. You want to touch on visual, auditory, smell, touch, and taste, as many of those senses as you can for whatever subject or learning experience that they're doing. Hands-on learning, whole body experience, super important. You can use music. You can do math facts, spelling words, grammar rules to music. You can give visual pictures. You can also give life to stories by doing a skit or a puppet show to help them understand and comprehend. So the paper I gave you there are just some quick strategies that you can use. So the first is the Q-tip spelling. It's a bag filled with paint, and so they can write out the words. So they're seeing it, doing it. It's kinesthetic movement. Lego spelling, I've used this one. They can put together words using Legos. You've got sight word twister for some older kids, and you can have them eat their sight words or alphabet letters or word families that you're using. So the next one I want to talk about is the visual conceptual approach. This cues in the right brain and the left brain together, so they're seeing and they're reading. So here you can see for the word up, you have it written, but then there's a picture to help cue them in. So the dog is going up. We, there's a boy and a girl, and then for run, you can see the little boy is run. For the last approach I want to talk about today, it's the Orton-Gillingham approach. This is a pretty new approach. Reading Horizons is who funds this, and they're online. It's a simple to complex approach. It's where they use simple marking systems. They believe it's the important lies in the way phonetics are taught. So you can see at the bottom, I've given you some examples. So the first one is sun. As you can see, the vowel is marked with an X at the bottom. And then the N is the consonant. It's marked with an asterisk at the top, which means it's a protective consonant, which means the vowel will be short. And you can see it's a half moon. Versus if you go to number 3, it says go. The vowel is marked with an X, but there's no protective consonant, so it's marked with a line, which indicates to the child that it is a long vowel. I have a quote that I would like to read, and it really struck home for me. Everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. And that was by Albert Einstein, who also is a dyslexic. There's so much truth in that quote. Each child is so unique, and they all learn in different ways, and there is no one size fits all when it comes to teaching children. So it's our job to facilitate that growth and then being able to bloom academically and at home. And I believe that if we have a basic understanding of not only dyslexia as a learning disability, but other disabilities that are out there, we can help provide accommodations and early detection programs and early interventions to help them be successful just like their peers. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions? I know that was a lot of information in a short period of time.